because there's a lot to talk about this. We're going to spend some time talking about the Pro Volleyball Federation because they kicked off in a big way last Wednesday night. And in their first 3 matches in league history, they put 24,713 butts in seats, many of which were 11,000 of which were at the very first game last Wednesday night in Omaha when the Atlanta Vibe beat the Omaha Supernovas 3-2, which was an awesome game. I want to hear all your thoughts, Everett, about just the level of volleyball and the quality of the product and overall. But even with all of my like mixed thoughts and associations in American professional volleyball, like, this is a spectacular accomplishment and is fantastically good for the game.
First and foremost, like game one, you've got like 11,000 people in the stands in Omaha. Like those are big numbers for volleyball.
Huge.
Anyway. Those are still like that's bigger than most Superliga stadiums. That's bigger than the majority of Plus Liga stadiums. Like that is massive for volleyball. Professional volleyball doesn't get those kind of numbers. Like
no, it
World
doesn't.
Nations League doesn't get that kind of number. So that's absolutely massive, and I hope they continue it. I'm gonna say, Rob, the overall product is one of the more enjoyable watching experiences I've had watching volleyball. Just in the sense, like it felt very comfortable. It felt very at home. I thought the level of ball was actually pretty good. You can definitely tell that it's like it's not the Superliga and it's not Turkey. It's not top level of like that. And you can kind of tell it's a very defensive league, and the numbers are real low. Like offensive numbers are real low. You can 100% tell that it is everyone else from the NCAA, right? Where that all of the big name hitters are going to overseas after they finish, or to love VB, but we'll talk about that later. Like we won't talk about the fact that all the national team players are going to the other league, and this is kind of everyone else. We won't touch on that for a little bit, but you can definitely tell that like they're missing those star offensive players, and I think that's going to come. But the brand of volleyball is entertaining. It's good solid volleyball, good solid rallies. The broadcast for me and Rob, you and I were going back and forth about it a little bit, especially on that first night. It did leave to me. It was solid. Like you had 2 commentators on, one person who knew volleyball generally and another person who is generally a man who didn't. I don't know where that happened. Obviously, we're going to be pretty critical of it because like we know some pretty good volleyball commentators. They're sitting right here with us. And we'd like to be around that. And like the overall production value was no better than like a regular season game of your local college, right?
Right. So they couldn't quite figure. It seemed like they had some last second issue with where they were going to broadcast it, because they have this sort of weird mixed deal with some Bally Sports Live app and something called
CBS
Watch
and
Stadium
Sports Live and
CBS Sports
Stadium app.
So,
yeah.
But then it just ended up that the first couple matches were on YouTube, which is, I mean, is great for the viewer, but like it seemed like there were some issues with their broadcast rights holders, whatever. Can't broadcast volleyball at 720p.
No, it is.
Can't do it.
But like, would you say you can't do it? But we literally watch Superliga on the best.
Yeah,
volleyballs.
this is the United States we're talking about. But this is
at least 60p. We're gonna give it to them. So like
me per second. Yeah, this is American professional sports. This isn't Volleyball World and their horrible platform. This isn't Eurovolley TV and that horrible platform. This isn't Boomers and Trench Coats. This is a brand new entity in American sports who I do not give a pass for broadcasting in 720p. That's not acceptable. The commentary was not good enough by my standards. The camera angles and all just it wasn't a very innovative broadcast, so that there were a lot of chances to do some things that were cool. It was pretty limited in the storytelling, other than the obvious that it's the first match in league history. But again, this is fantastically good for the game. I have a buddy from Purdue who lives in Omaha and is like a ancillary volleyball fan, and he bought season tickets to these Omaha Supernovas games, and him and his fiance were there, and he said that it was fantastic. He said the vibe in the arena was outstanding, and that he's excited to go back to more games like that. That sort of thing is what is most promising to me, is that they can put out a compelling in arena product to keep putting butts in seats, because that's how the league's actually going to sustain itself financially. And there are a lot of those things about the broadcast that I think are pretty easily fixable.
Absolutely. And I
Starting,
mean, like we're
starting with
nitpicking
hiring
this.
better commentators.
Yeah. Like this, yeah. And I mean, the fact that you guys go to a break or a timeout, but it's literally just the Real Sports logo, like, or
Yeah,
not
there's
Real
you
Sports.
got to do a lot more with that. Get B-roll, get interviews, get like
It's
have
stats are like
commentators.
even just stand in there and talk about the game a little bit.
Of
But like that's
course.
once again where you need commentators who, and like once again, it's generally been a play-by-play person who doesn't know volleyball and a very good person, like a person who knows about volleyball, and they're they're doing the color. But overall, I mean, if we want to talk about some of the games, I mean, the first one was a banger. I mean, Atlanta comes away week 1. They're 2-0, baby.
Both
2-0,
on the road.
both on the road, 2 5-setters. You absolutely love that. Where are the
Yeah,
results?
I've got the stats up. So on night 1, the Atlanta Vibe went up 2-0 in Omaha, and then fell asleep a bit in sets 3 and 4. I think Omaha gets a lot of credit. Then it was just a miracle run, a miraculous run on the serve of Tori Dilfer, that they were down 13-10 in the 5th and went on a 5-0 run, like a side out, and then a 4-0 service run to end up winning the match 15-13. So other than the painfully low offensive numbers, I mean, you said it that they're very low. I'll go as far as to say that they were painfully low. The inability of some of these players to score points.
Yeah.
Very defensive minded. Definitely had an NCAA feel to the level and the style of the game. But I mean, 5 sets and a late like miracle comeback to win the first match in league history. Like the whoever is up high at the PVF like couldn't have scripted that any better.
No, I mean, Leah Edmond coming in 27 for 70, right? And that just speaks to how long some of the rallies so far in the PVF have been. Like they go on for a while.
So many
16%
attempts.
efficiency for Atlanta, 22 for Omaha. A lot more errors on the Atlanta side of things. 17 in total, 7 for Edmond on her own. Grace Cleveland, who actually impressed me quite a bit. She was
Purdue girl.
Purdue girl, yeah, 11 for 43, 6 errors as well. So, it's interesting because like Bethania De La Cruz, who now comes off the bench for the Dominican Republic, is still out there and scoring points for them. So, it's going to take some time to figure it out, but it's still pretty entertaining. Like it's a fun watch. Like I absolutely enjoy watching it, and actually, like we can talk about the game on Thursday night
Let's do it.
a little bit between Grand Rapids and Columbus. And I guess it was on Friday night, but it doesn't really matter. This one was good too. Grand Rapids winning their first game at home, which was really nice for them. This one was a donging.
It was indeed. And big shout out to Claire Chaussee, who I've always really liked since she was in the Final Four at Louisville. And this is like a 5'11", 6 foot, like outside hitter type player who's not dominatingly physical, but is super duper skilled, crazy fast. I mean, her passing numbers were unbelievable. 44% perfect, 75% positive, and 21 for 50 at 32% efficiency, and 23 points in 3 sets. Like that's insane. And for this league, that is going to be an offensive performance that holds up for a little while, especially for an outside. And big shout out to Ashley Evans as well, who's starting at setter on that team, another Purdue girl, who's been like kind of on the fringes of the national team for a bit. But like one thing that I'm wondering about the PVF in general is will the offenses, like will the teams actually develop offensively as they figure themselves out, or is this just like kind of the league's identity? Because there is not a single, like especially at the opposite position, I don't see a single player in this league who can actually score any points like the way that we're used to seeing it over in Europe.
No. One thing to note about the Columbus Fury, just to touch on this game ago, they are missing like first pick of the draft overall, Asia O'Neill. She was out in this one. Former national team player Megan Courtney Lush, she was also out for this one, and as well as their setter Jenna Rosenthal. So they're missing some bodies over there in Columbus. So that result, we're having only one player in double digits is not understanding. And you know what, Rob? I think it's going to be, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for some athletes to kind of get into it. I think why Leah Edmond was so good in that first one is that she's been playing in AU Pro Sports for the past number of seasons. So she's been used to, she's been living a pretty cushy life playing AU Pro Sports. Like it's a lot of training. You get paid pretty well for, like not much of a grueling compared to an actual league. But she's been used to like playing a real style of volleyball, if you will, where you're not getting subbed out. So yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I mean, I think you would know the landscape better than I. Like I really only know 2 athletes like intimately in this entire league, and it's going to take me a little bit time to figure it out. But
well, yeah, I mean, kind of like we said, this is basically just a continuation of the NCAA. It's the NCAA players who weren't quite good enough to go play at the big time levels in Europe or crack like the big time levels with the national team, because like you said, those players are otherwise spoken for. But and it is exactly the style that we see in the NCAA. You don't have point scoring opposites in the NCAA. Like that's not how it works there, and that's weird. Because it's because of the substitution thing. And like if PVF is going to play international style substitutions, only 6 with the 1 in 1 out rule, that's going to be the biggest adjustment for these players, is because they're so used to being able to DS one of their outsides, and they pull their opposite out in the back row and DS for her. They have a libero who can serve for one of the middles. There's so much more specialization and not nearly as many 6 rotation volleyball players that come out of the NCAA now. So that's going to be something that the first team to get 1 or 2 players in the PVF that figures that out is going to dominate for a little while, because if you can have pin to pin scoring in every rotation, then you're going to be better than everyone else. Because right now, nobody has that. Nobody has sideline to sideline scoring ability in every rotation in the PVF yet. So that's the evolution in the offenses that I'm looking to see. Like how much are they actually able to spend time in the gym? Because their travel schedule is a little bit weird and doesn't seem like there's a lot of system to it.
It's definitely got a
scattered way.
They're playing like there was 3 games this week, and Atlanta's already played 2, and other teams haven't played any, and there's 2 games this week, but both of them are in San Diego, so San Diego's going to play 2. So we're still figuring it out. I do think though, Rob, that this is the MLS, but way further than when the MLS first started, right? This is the MLS. Maybe not quite now, because I think the MLS is starting to get a lot better, but it is not the leftovers, because the leftovers are still pretty good. They're not like leftovers from like a couple of nights ago. They're from lunch, right? So you're just having like a little bit of like, they're still pretty good, and like they're still within the day, but they're just like, they're not the first pickings. It's not the first chicken breast that you're going to pick off the plate, but maybe it's the second. But then you're getting all of these like somewhat studs from the USA who are young and figuring it out, and then these old like wily vets like Bethany de la Cruz, and then Grand Rapids has Amelia Dimitrova, who's the Bulgarian like legendary opposite, who 14 points in this one. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see. I'm interested to see how it's going to develop. I've heard that they're going to be doing a weekly kind of like talk show going on with this too, but I haven't seen anything about that as well. It's been interesting to see, because before this match, PVS had like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and now they're sitting at 14.3, and the games have gotten like all right numbers, like 109,000 for the first one, 64,000 for the second, and 55 for the third.
Yeah, decent. I mean, if they had known further in advance that those were going to be on YouTube and could have promoted their channel more, I think it would have been a bit of a different story. So, but before I have a couple more takes about the league overall. Another road win for Atlanta. They beat the Orlando Valkyries, another 3-2. Fun game, 2 overtimes in sets 2 and 3. Adora Anai, who I didn't know anything about, led Orlando in scoring with 21. Atlanta similarly balanced. Leah Edmond, I think, got banged up a little bit late and ended up having a really quite bad statistical game, but you saw Josiana Presley off the bench, who I remember loving when she was at Baylor. So that was cool to see. It's like kind of some like blast from the past sort of names that like, oh yeah, I remember you being a superstar in college 5 years ago. I wonder what you've been up to. Like that's kind of what
Yeah, and I mean, like, so, like, on Orlando, you got Canadian international Shauna
Ryan
Joseph was on the
Joseph.
right side, who, like, made a run to the Final Four with Florida for a few years ago, and everyone was up in arms because Karch was, like, gabbing about her on the broadcast, and I mean, like, Shauna's a homie, like, we go back, and I know that for her was just a bit of like a yo, let's go type of moment when you have a Karch, like, gushing over you and pretty much saying everything but, like, I wish you were American to come play for me, just because of her attitude. I mean, although she didn't have a great game, she was 6 for 34 with
0%
0%
efficiency.
efficiency. So not too great from my girl. But talking about Leah Edmond, like, sure, she didn't swing on a lot, or she swung on a lot of balls, and I'm not like this is like this. Look at these stats really scare me
It's
for
bad,
this,
dude.
Rob, because like she was having a bad game, -6 efficiency, 10 for 51, and you just kept on giving her the ball. Like, something else needs to happen there. And the fact you guys still won that's a lot. But she passed a boatload of balls. She was targeted 52 times out of 91 in serve receive there for Atlanta.
Dude, I'm telling you, I want to see over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to give this league a long leash, but the on-court product as far as offense, I really think leaves a lot to be desired right now.
But
Again,
But also, we know that because we watch international volleyball. How much of this fan base is going to be watching? Like, how many people in Omaha are watching Super League?
probably very few, but if those people get used to 10% efficiency as a team for your offense for a game, that I don't think is the best thing for the sustainability of the product. The product is better when points are actually being scored, and obviously one reason why people love women's volleyball is that the rallies are longer, which is great. But there is there's critical mass for that. There needs to be termination. There needs to be point scoring and physicality at some point somewhere. And right now the league doesn't have that. So I'm going to give them several weeks for the teams to figure it out and just figure out how to watch film, pick on advantages, and develop chemistry, and just figure out how to score points. But that part of it is not there yet, and that part of it I didn't like early.
It's matches like this, Rob, where I really think that there's too much volleyball in volleyball, right? And there's too much of it to consume over one match. Like, this first match was 2 hours and 55 minutes. The second match was 3 hours and 2 minutes. And like, that's with they don't do like a big pregame show. Like, they don't have a big pregame run up. They don't do a big postgame show. Like, that's pretty much the game time, which is nuts to think about. Like, those are long rallies to watch.
3 hours is too long for volleyball.
When you think about, like, when you compare it to the NFL run time is 3 hours, but the majority of that is filler. Like, I've never been to an NFL game. I've been to CFL games, and like, there's the majority of the time you're sitting around waiting for the play to happen, right? Talked about this before. You know what I'd love to see? Best of the 7, games to 15. You need less points to win a game, so it's not going to create as long of games, but it creates way more tension, more back and forth.
I don't hate that. The last couple of things I wanted to bring up. One, that they have volley station stats in the PVF. Fantastic. They have Bolt 6 instant replays and challenges. Fantastic. Excellent choices there. So they're making great choices with their tech and their like volleyball specific stuff to implement in the game that is just the global standard now. So that's great. I was going to bring up the match times. It's too long. 3 hours is too long of a match. The breaks between sets are far too long. I hate the NCAA thing where they take like a 15-minute break after set number 2. I hate that. And they're doing something like that in the PVF. It's more like a 7 or 8 minute break. Too long. There's no halftime in volleyball.
I don't mind it.
I hate that.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it for a few reasons. Like, for the fans in the crowd, get up, go to the bathroom, go get a drink, go get a piece of pizza, popcorn, whatever you want. Every other sport, hockey has periods. You get the two intermissions. There's half times in basketball and in football. Every other North American sport has it in that. Baseball's boring as shit. No one cares to miss anything anyways, right? Like, unless you're watching the Dodgers, no one's going to care right now.
Okay, well, if you're going to keep the all the breaks, like you said earlier, that has to be filled with something on the broadcast. It
100%.
has to be
That's
filled with something on the broadcast. There's so
absolutely.
much more that could be done with that dead time, especially just educating relatively new fans about volleyball. You need more content, off-court content. And
Mhm.
but that's both during matches and outside of matches, which is something I'm really curious about. You said like they have a plan for some sort of talk show or like YouTube live show or whatever it's going to be. I want to see that, and I want that to be expanded as much as possible, because the storytelling in between matches and day to day, like people, that's what gets people to really follow and care and understand the personalities, understand like all that stuff about North American sports that's why we do sports better than anyone else in the world. That sort of thing is necessary for any young league in any sport. So they have to focus much more on media outside of match time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, this is the first big shot in the North American volleyball wars. Like, this is the first real shot sent off in the North American volleyball wars. AU pro volleyball, like, no, like that was
Nope.
kids playing in sand buckets. Like, I love the fact that there's like kind of some kind of link between AU and PVF, and so like that's why you're seeing AU players playing the PVF, which I think is super cool. But the next 10 years are going to be really interesting here as we start to figure out this landscape that is North American professional volleyball. And you're 100% right, Rob. Like, we need to move on. And it's a really topical conversation right now in Canada with the PWHL starting. And it was really interesting on Friday night. You know, I had a buddy came over and he knew nothing about volleyball, but he was jazzed up and he was asking all the questions. And he was acting like a 4-year-old dad, like, oh, whoa, what did they just do there? That was crazy. That was nuts. Like, what just happened? And I'm trying to explain to him, but like, I can't explain it on a level that he's going to understand. So it's just us talking in circles. But you know, we go to put it on, and on my YouTube, it's PWHL and the Pro Volleyball Federation. So it's cool that women's sports are taking over. But the conversation we're having about the PWHL is moving on from that celebration of firsts. And I think this is something that women's sports get into 100%, because it's all about the let's do for the next generation, let's give them hope, and which is absolutely great. I'm 100% for that, but fuck it, let's care about these girls now.
Yep.
Let's care about the wins and the losses and the pluses and the minuses and the scoring and the not scoring. Let's put a billion into now. And that's exactly like Rob, I was messaging you and I was like, we really need to go hard on the PVF. Like, we need to treat it like it is the Super League of Femminile or any of the top European leagues like the Champions League, because it needs that kind of momentum, and to talk about it past being that it's a great thing that the women get to play pro volleyball.
Thank you. I couldn't have said that better. We are going to continue to cover the PVF, and we're going to be intentional about the tone with which we cover it, because we're going to talk about these games like they're games in a major sports league that is gender agnostic. We're going to talk about good individual and good team performances. We're going to talk about bad individual and bad team performances. That women's sports needs more of that. It's not just of course, there are celebratory aspects to the opportunities that we're giving top-level female athletes now, but this is sports. Sports are sports. There are winners and losers. There are people that don't like each other. There's drama because there's win and losing. There's heartbreak. There is joy from on-court performances. It's not just like kumbaya, all like give each other hugs after the game, even though you get 3 donged. I want this league to develop in such a way that you hate teams, develop rivalries that have legitimate fire, hate losing.
Fights in the stands, 100%.
Like it's why I watch 2 Thailand women's volleyball teams so much sometimes. It's because they don't hate losing. They're okay with it. It bothers me when teams don't hate to lose, and that's how we're going to talk about the Pro Volleyball Federation. This is a real sports product with real athletes who are competing at a very high level, who care about their on-court product and who care about the results. This isn't just about building a league for top-level female athletes. This is about winning matches and winning championships, and that's how it should be talked about across the board. And that's how we're going to do it on the show.
If the conversation around this league is only about it's amazing that we're we're giving them the women these opportunities, then this league is already a failure.
Doomed.
Right?
Doomed.
Like that cannot be the conversation around it by the end of the league, much in the same way that AU Pro was at the end of that first year.
AU Pro Volleyball, every second that league spent in existence was just celebrating.
But still, it's still going. It's still happening.
Is it?
But like not on the same level. I mean, I think it's also important to understand that like AU is bigger than, and like they do softball and they do lacrosse and I think they do basketball.
I know.
Like they
basketball,
it's like,
and
yeah. So it's much bigger than it's much bigger than that. But yeah, because
it's not a good sports product. It's not
no.
a good long-term sustainable sports product. It's just not.
Because the whole point of it isn't about creating a league, it's about celebrating women in sport. Right? Which I think if you want to celebrate women in sport, we absolutely have to, and that's absolutely important. Creating a league based off it is not the point of it, and it's not going to serve anyone right. It's like there's like a soccer tournament that's called like the She Believes Cup. Like that's the stupidest thing ever. Like I know that's going to strike a chord with some people, but like no, like let's
disrespectful to female athletes to treat them just like they're out there celebrating. It's disrespectful to the levels of competitor that they are. To not talk about their sports and their on-court performances the same way that we talk about every other sport in every other place in the world. It's not good for the game to talk about it like that, and that's not how we're going to do it on the show. We're gonna analyze the matches just like we do for the Champions League final.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like that's one of the things that we don't talk about, that gender equity within sport a lot on this show. And I've had friends of mine who I respect deeply who have been like, when are we doing a podcast? I want to talk about like the women's like role in sport and all of this stuff. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But like, that's not the platform for this show. There's so many other platforms that do stuff. Like if you want that, like go to The Gist, like go to like women's sports. Like there's so many other like fantastic, like sport, like female outlet, like female driven sports outlets, for you to go to, where they're going to talk about those things that are important conversations. But we talk about X's and O's, baby. We talk about wins and losses, and that's out. So this is going to be the only conversation we have about this regarding the PVF, and even one league volleyball when they start up in the fall. Like this is all we're talking about it, because from now what matters is performance, baby. Let's go. And on that note, shine up, girl. You know you doing
play better. Yep, play better. And the last thing I'll say on this topic is that if you want to talk about gender equity in sports, you look at men's volleyball in the United States. Let me tell you right now, if the genders were swapped and the numbers were the way they are, there would be riots in the streets.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you had the number of like male athletes who play the sport as like female athletes, if you had the success that they've had at the international level, if you had the success that they've had that you've seen at the NCAA level, where I think after this season you could 100% say that like NCAA women's volleyball is the third biggest sport in the NCAA. Football, basketball, women's volleyball, like that's what it is.
But imagine if that, like, you know, there are hundreds of NCAA women's teams. There's a 64 team tournament. Imagine if there were that many men's teams and no professional league, and so few women's teams. Like if the gender disparity in the United States for volleyball were switched, there would be riots in the streets.
Well, I mean, it's football.
No. If the gender disparity were switched, if there were way more opportunities for men to play volleyball than for women to play volleyball in America, there would be riots in the streets.